Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. I'm very excited today because we are doing another Withering Watchpile, but this time with special guest Dylan. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about 80s action. This is a topic you chose and you are very compassionate, or not compassionate, I guess compassionate. You're very, you love it so much. I just woke up, so I'm still kind of waking up here, but welcome to the channel.
Okay,
How have you been?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, and I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm quite good. I watched all of my movies within the last like 48 hours, so they're very fresh in my mind. And
That's good.
so I didn't have many
Good.
notes that I wrote down, but the movies that everybody knows from for one reason or another, and so they're all revisits for me. And I accidentally had kind of three major 80s action stars throughout my video movies. And I didn't
That's
mean for
awesome.
that to happen. That was the happy accident I was talking about before we hopped on. But
I
yeah.
I think I have one major 80s star, like one star that can kind of be like condensed to the 80s, one who's like a star over all the time, and then one who is not a star at all. So,
So tell me a bit about yourself and kind of introduce yourself to people who may not know you, because this is your first
um,
appearance. So very exciting.
yeah, I'm not really on YouTube at all, so yet I'm thinking about it, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get some feedback here and some constructive criticism. Uh, but no, I met you on Instagram because I saw a video you did with Will Dodson, and I was a student of his, much like yourself, and he told me to check out your channel, and I checked it out and just started watching your videos. So, which is, I would like we've talked about how like I I watch YouTube. I watch a lot of criticism on YouTube, but I don't actually watch many Blu-ray collectors on YouTube. Even though, if you can see behind me, I am somewhat of a Blu-ray collector myself. Um, but no, I Blu-ray collecting is just like maybe my main hobby, which is uh, something I've been interested in since well, I used to collect DVDs when I was 11 or 12, and uh, then when I got a real job, I was able to buy Blu-rays instead, and I said okay. So that was about 2018, and I've been buying Blu-rays ever since, and I've accumulated a collection that takes up too much space, has taken up too much money, and I don't have enough time to actually properly appreciate because I just keep buying. So, um, but yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, my this is why we have the withering watch pile. We're trying to make it wither and not grow more than what we watch. But it's so. Tell me a little bit why you wanted to focus in on 80s action. What about it do you like so much?
So, I don't know where it came from in my life. My my parents introduced me to movies, the movies that I grew up with. And so the movies that got me interested into movies were mostly movies from the 80s. So I kind of grew attached to that production style, those scores, those that cinematography. Because, I mean, there's like an 80s sheen to stuff, whether it be high budget or low budget, that kind of like I latch myself onto. Uh, the three movies that really got me into movies when I was a little kid were Star Wars, which was 70s, but um, and Back to the Future from 1985, and Pee Wee's Big Adventure from 1985. And so, but the 80s, the look and the feel, the music, the tone of stuff. I don't know, something about it just has sort of stuck with me. And my primary listening habits as far as music is concerned is also 80s stuff. So um, I don't know. I really like 80s stuff, but like you said, I'm passionate about 80s action. And I found when I was going through my movies that I've recently purchased, whenever I get 80s action movies, those 80s action or 80s horror, I should say, those are the first ones to go in to the play, to play, I should say. out of the pile. So I was like 80s action because I have a lot of 80s action movies I haven't watched. But then I was looking through all my 80s action movies. I'm like, I've watched all of them. So I found three that I hadn't watched, and I was like, okay, these are going to be the three, because I keep I keep buying 80s action movies, but every time I buy them, those are the first. Those move to the top of the stack instantly. Um, but I don't think action is my favorite genre because I think horror is probably my favorite genre. Um, but I still love action movies. Um, and I think another interesting thing, to digress a little bit for just a second, is I just read a book about Victor Albert Pune,
Hmm.
who made Cyborg and Nemesis and all these 80s and 90s action movies. He made some sci-fi too, but like um, the writer of the book, who is a guy named Justin. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, so I'm not going to try. But he said something about how 80s action directors don't necessarily get the appreciation that 80s horror directors do, because it seems like there's almost less of a if you follow the auteur theory, there's less of a maybe distinguishing style for each 80s action director than there is 80s horror directors. So unless you're somebody big like John McTiernan that made Die Hard and Predator, the big ones, or Richard Donner that made Lethal Weapon, you're not going to necessarily say that's my favorite 80s action director like you would say Carpenter or Craven or Cronenberg or whoever's my favorite 80s horror director. So I thought that was an interesting point, and I think that's something that I'm going to bring up when I talk about one of my movies. So to kind
Cool.
of preface that.
Yeah, yeah, that's all amazing. I never really thought about the whole style between the 80s action and 80s horror, because 80s horror is very distinct and you can see it. You
Mhm.
see I mean, just the cinematography, you just know right away. But with 80s action, yeah, because one thing I realized when I was doing this episode or preparing for it is that I have very little 80s action in my collection. It's mostly horror movies, and whatever 80s action I have, it's either from Asia or it's John Carpenter with Big Trouble in Little China or something like that, because I love those movies and I just keep rewatching them. I haven't watched really any Chuck Norris movies, Van Damme, uh, all of them. I mean, Albert Pune, I haven't looked into his films yet, and he just passed away this year, so rest in peace to him. But
Yeah,
like,
that was kind of devastating to me.
oh yeah,
I was he was like one of the first directors when I got into kind of films by directors, because I
hmm,
got into B movies at the same time, which is like a weird, strange thing about my discovery of movies. But like, um, when I got into Pune, I always picked on him. I was like, that's the guy that made the bad Captain America movie. But um, you know, it, he made some really and if you read the book, I'll actually get the book. I have it right here. If you read the book and you read about kind of all the battles and struggles that he had,
hmm,
it's called Radioactive Dreams, which is the name of one of his movies, but they named the book that. Um, and read about all the battles and struggles that he faced among producers and distributors, just taking things out of his hands, which is a story all too common in cinema. Um, you'll I think grow to appreciate his stuff a little more, um, because even through all of uh, his struggles, he persevered and he continued to make movies until he died. So um, no, I didn't pick any Albert Pune movies, but
yeah,
I really
yeah.
appreciate the guy. So
That's
sorry
really
to
interesting.
digress.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate conversations like that because I don't know anything about these directors, so now I'm actually more interested. I may actually start to seek him out. But
Start with Nemesis.
Nemesis, okay, I'll add
It's
that to the watch.
one of the um this should not necessarily be a criteria to suggest something, but as far as his filmography is concerned and what I've seen, it's the most fun to watch, and it is one of the most fun action movies I've ever seen. So, highly recommend it.
Cool. So since you chose the theme, would you like to go first with your third favorite, or would you?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Move some movies out of the way. Okay. So, like I said, I picked three. I keep going back because they always have these great sales, and they release all these 80s action movies. Kino Lorber, when they have their sales, things are like $7.99, $9.99 on Blu-ray, and I'm like, I can't pass it up, so I keep getting 80s action movies from them, and so all three of them ended up being from Kino Lorber. So the first one I picked, or my least favorite, it was actually the second one I watched, is one called Blind Fury with Rutger Hauer from Blade Runner. He's the main antagonist in the film. But I thought this was a decent movie, but I didn't necessarily. I don't. One of my things is I don't watch trailers for movies because I don't like it when trailers give away movies. So I just usually abstain from watching the trailer. I'm just gonna watch the movie. I'm gonna go in blind. No pun intended. But I went into this movie not necessarily knowing what the tone was, and I thought it was just gonna be, he has a samurai sword on the cover. There's guns being sliced in half, and he's wearing sunglasses, and it's called Blind Fury. So I figured, okay, so he's a blind samurai. And this is an American adaptation of the screenplay for Zatoichi.
Yes.
So it is very much in that style, but it also borrows from the kind of lone wolf and cub sort of narrative of the protector leading the child figure, kind of as a father figure. Even though in this film Rutger Hauer is not actually the father of the kid he's leading, he's actually leading the kid to his father. So, but it sort of falls into like this thing where the kid doesn't like him, and so there's a lot of like little quips he gives, and sort of like the tone sort of shifts into like this comedy thing. It reminded me a lot tonally of Terminator 2, how at the beginning John Connor doesn't like the T-800, and he's like, get away from me, you creepy man, and like then it turns out, oh, he loves him, and at the end it's all sad. That's exact. Now this came up before Terminator 2, so uh, you know, I'm just saying, if you think of that storyline, make the T-800 Zatoichi, and then add in like this sort of Midnight Run esque style of comedy, balance of comedy and action, you get this. But the one highlight for me was there's a scene where Sho Kosugi shows up. Sho Kosugi from probably most famously the Ninja trilogy, the canon trilogy, Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3. And he's awesome. And he's fighting Rutger Hauer, and the fight's great. So all the choreography in this movie is excellent. So if anything, check out the film for the choreography.
Awesome. Yeah, because me and Leon, who does the Withering Watchpile now with me as the kind of main thing we do now, we originally started with the Zatoichi series, going through movie by movie, and we got to, I think it's movie 15 to 18 is when the script is adapted for Blind Fury, and the original screenwriters sued the producers of Blind Fury because they did not credit them at all, and it's a direct adaptation apparently, because the kid is quippy with Zatoichi, but the entire series is pretty humorous, so it really works. And I love that movie, so I've always wanted to see Blind Fury, but it's always had low ratings, so I've never kind of rushed to see it. It's just kind of like, oh, if I see it, I'll see it, but I'm not going to seek it out.
It's not terrible, but if you've seen the canon movie called Gymkata, this is the same screenwriter, and it's Gymkata's like the most strange idea for a movie adapted or not adapted, but written into one of the funniest action movies. It's it's oh, sorry, one more thing. So I didn't expect the tone to be what it was, and then I saw the producer credit for this, and it's Tim Matheson,
Hmm.
who I guess I don't know what his big thing he's known for is, but I know one of his early things was the movie Animal House. So I'm like, a comedy actor? Like what? And then that completely took me by surprise because I expected it to be kind of like raw and like a little more like kind of just tense, but no, it's kind of funny. But I haven't actually seen Zatoichi, so that's a gap. So I should, if I had I known that, I probably would have had a better understanding going in.
Well, the Criterion sale is live. You can get the box set.
Yeah, that's
It's a big box set. It's 25 films, so it's a beefy set.
I haven't really scratched the surface of my Bergman set.
I haven't. Yeah, that's a mountain looming over me as well.
These box sets take too much time.
But is there anything else you want to say before I go into my third? Or
Nah, I mean that's it. I just I don't wholeheartedly recommend it, but if you want to see some good choreography, it's actually pretty decent for that. So whoever was doing stunt choreography and whoever the stunt people were in the film, really really good job.
cool. Well, thank you for that, because now I'm actually more interested in it, knowing that it's such an interesting screenplay and kind of similar to Terminator 2. But speaking of Sho Kazugi, I actually watched a Sho Kazugi movie for this one, and it's one that is interesting. It's one that I've seen a couple years ago, and I enjoyed it. It's very similar to me as Raw Force, where you kind of have to watch it with somebody to really enjoy it. But the movie
Right.
is from 1986 by Gordon Hessler. It is Rage of Honor. I'm trying to get the
Oh
light.
man, that was one I was trying to find that exact era release, and it's out of print.
Oh, I didn't even know that. I've had this for years and years and years. But
I got it. They released at the same time they released Pray for Death.
that's the other
And I
one
got
I
that
need.
one.
I haven't seen that one. But what's really cool about this movie is that it Sho Katsugi kind of really as the main focus for the story. And I haven't seen many Sho Kazugi. I haven't seen Ninja 1, 2, 3, or Ninja 3 The Domination. So I know that one's the most loved one. But what's interesting about this one is that's the same director as Golden Voyage of Sinbad, which is like a BFI, like highly ranked or highly acclaimed like Sinbad movie. From what I've heard, I haven't seen it myself, but he also did the one you just showed, Pray for Death. And what's funny
Yeah.
is that the cast in this movie is really amazing, because you have as the sort of, because Sho Kazugi plays a detective in this film. He plays a DEA agent. He's trying to capture the people bringing drugs to a city of LA, and he finds out that they're all in Argentina, so he has to go down there and break the law because his boss sergeant is like, no, you can't go down there, we'll do it through our own channels. And obviously it's every 80s movie, so the police are part of the kind of drug selling. So, Sho Kazugi, he knows that there's something up, and he wants to solve this mystery. So the whole movie is him and Charles Lucia, who is Father Buttface, is what I call him, from Society. He's in it with Sho Kazugi, and they work really well off of each other. And he's also in Hospital Massacre, which is a Vinegar Syndrome title, which is
Just got that.
it's
Halfway
pretty
Black
good.
Friday.
Yeah, I really enjoy that one. I also highly recommend X-Ray. That one's very good as well in that double feature. But this is very similar to a movie that I kind of talked about, but Raw Force, where watching it alone, it's still funny. You can really see like what makes the movie great, but you have to be watching it with somebody to really enjoy it. So you
Yeah.
can have sort of the like, oh, whoa, like that was a great kick, and oh my gosh, they used a dummy and they didn't even try to hide it as they, tossed it over the roof. And there's plenty of dummies like that, so it's really fun. But watching it alone this time for this episode, I was kind of like, yeah, I need to watch it with people because me and my dad saw this years ago when I first did the Aerosail, and we had a happy grand time because we're like, whoa, like. But watching it alone, you don't get that interaction with somebody else,
Yeah.
So it's I definitely recommend the movie. Just watch it with a group of people and just have fun with it.
It's
So
like I think it was Roger Ebert saying something about watching um Rocky Horror Picture Show alone is like the worst experience he could ever imagine. But watching it with people is the best experience he could ever imagine.
that's one I actually haven't seen yet because
I haven't either.
it's just one day I'll watch it.
Yeah, I want to go to a screening. I'd rather go to a screening, I think, to experience it. Kind of, I've seen it. I said I haven't seen it. I've seen it, but I haven't. I've seen it. I feel like I haven't seen it because I've seen it. I watched it on TV, with commercials, and I watched it
Hmm.
with just my sister. And I think watching it with a crowd would kind of do it justice. So
Oh yeah. So do you have any, you know, I guess comments or anything about this movie? Like, what do you think of Pray for Death, for example? Have you seen Rage of Honor?
I haven't seen Rage of Honor. I want that disc, but Pray for Death is actually pretty good, as well. Um, I think what's interesting is Gordon Hessler also did some of the post Corman Vincent Price Edgar Allan Poe movies.
Oh.
I believe. I think when Corman sort of stopped doing those, when he got into just releasing Sirio H. Santiago movies over and over, uh, or Joe Dante movies, I guess. Kind of in the late '70s, Vincent Price was still kind of doing that kind of thing, but and I could be wrong. They could be not Edgar Allan Poe, but that sort of gothic horror element. And I think his, I haven't seen those, so I don't know how that style carries over into this. But I thought Pray for Death was really pretty good. It sounds honestly pretty similar to Rage of Honor. They're both set in. I remember correctly, it's also set in sort of like a crime-ridden neighborhood in LA, and he's sort of protecting his family from this group of criminals. But uh, the action's all decent, and the action's all pretty fun. So that always makes it worth it for me. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, I'd like to see Rage of Honor.
Yeah, it's very good. It's great. It's just
Ninja
at the
3 though.
bottom.
The first, I'm like an unabashed fan of canon films. And I don't always agree with the way that Golden Globe has handled their productions. Um, and no one really should be because I'm like the way they took stuff out of the hands of directors and the way they just let directors sort of do what they want, other directors, and then they sort of were inconsistent with that, and uh, it's kind of unfortunate. But uh, I think on the whole, a lot of their output is some of the most accessibly fun content of not content but cinema of the 80s in the United States. And um, me being the big 80s fan that I am, I sometimes I just want to sit down, and one of my comfort movies is Over the Top with Stallone where he's arm wrestling to get custody of his son. Uh, that's just like, I mean, because who else would greenlight something like that? So, but no, you get one of the first ones I saw was Enter the Ninja. The first one was Shokatsugi, where and I think to this of the five that we've sort of mentioned, um, Pray for Death, Rage of Honor, and then the Ninja trilogy, it's the only one where he's an antagonist.
Oh.
So, and it's pretty fun, but there's a moment in it that sticks in my mind because I was really into it. I watched it at a younger age, but I was really into Enter the Ninja, and uh, they use the sound effect that the kind of wah wah wah, you know, like somebody just lost on the Price is Right. They use that when some guy's arm gets chopped off, and I'm like, like I'm really into this action, and then they do that and they use it. I'm like, I'm out. I'm out. You have removed me from the movie. Revenge of the Ninja is pretty good too. I think he's a protagonist in that one. It's been many years, but Ninja 3 though, and it has the biggest reputation of the three, and rightfully so, because it is someone I don't even remember who, but I think on Letterboxd sort of perfectly described it as Flashdance meets a ninja movie meets The Exorcist, and that's exactly what it is. So, and it has Lucinda Dickey from Break In and Break In 2. So,
Ooh.
Break In 2, perfect movie.
Ooh. I'm intrigued. What so would you like to start your second one?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm sort of digressing a lot, so I'll
Oh,
try
that's
not to
fine.
here.
I'm happy to. We do it all the time. Ooh.
Program to Kill. Again from Kino Lorber. This is the one I said has like no real big names as far as the stars. It has Robert Ginty, who is I guess best known for being the lead in the James Glickenhaus movie The Exterminator. It's speaking of 80's directors who directed primarily action that should get more credit. James Glickenhaus, who did not direct this. Uh, Great director. I haven't seen the Exterminator, and he did one with Jackie Chan that I haven't seen either, called The Protector.
Yeah,
But
that one's great.
I think he's a great action director, and all of his movies, all sort of that I've seen, all sort of have like a great, I don't know, the great style to them. Particularly Shakedown with Peter Weller and Sam Elliott, in which Sam Elliott is a detective who lives in a movie theater, an abandoned movie theater, and Peter Weller is like a lawyer who has like uh, a group of criminals after him. It's it's a really it's been, again that's one that's been a long time, but I remember watching that and just being enthralled the whole time. That one really got me. Um, but again, okay, going back, Robert Ginty from The Exterminator is the lead. He's the least likely leading man, I think, of any. I know a lot of people might say Charles Bronson's the least likely leading man. Uh, Robert Ginty's even more or less likely to be a leading man if you just look at him, I think. But he doesn't have the Charles Bronson, say what you will about him, he has 10 times more charisma than Robert Ginty.
Agreed.
And it's also got Sandal Bergman from Conan the Barbarian, and I w- she's in Hell Comes to Frogtown, I believe. I don't want to be wrong about that, but I think she is. If I'm wrong, just correct me. Program to Kill though is it's released in 1987, and it has the plotting of a military type movie from 1987 would. The U.S. is going into a region in the Middle East, and they are uh, attacking terrorists because it's an 80s action movie. And there's an expat there who is Sandal Bergman, who has now turned against the United States military, and but Robert Ginty's an operative who's going to sort of pull her out so they can try her in the United States. It doesn't seem very legal, but he's doing it anyway. And he goes in and they kill her, but she's a great warrior, so they take her back to the U.S. and turn her into a cyborg.
Mm.
Um, and she becomes unbeatable because she's a cyborg, and they can't kill her. And so now she's after the government that turned her into a cyborg and killed her. And he's the only man that can stop her. Again, really, Robert Ginty, but okay. Um, it's pretty good. It has a lot of moments where it kind of like I feel like it dragged a little bit. But I did review this on my letterboxd, and I said the moment where they're doing the surgery to turn her into a cyborg, um, has the most impractical lighting for a surgery, or a surgical operating room I've ever seen. And even more so than, I don't know if you know the movie Flatliners by Joel Schumacher. That's about medical students, and that is the most, I thought, the most impractically lit medical facility I've ever seen in film. But no, this takes the cake. Um, but this has Paul Walker in it too.
Hmm.
Tammy and the T-Rex.
Wow.
It's certainly pre Fast and Furious. So, um, a decent movie. There's some good action. At one point, she calls a person on the phone and emits a high pitched noise that causes his ear to bleed and causes his car to explode.
Oh,
So,
why not?
yeah, worth it for that scene alone. I don't know. It's not again, not a wholehearted recommendation on that one, but it has its moments, and some of the cinematography. I should mention the cinematographer's name because um I don't know what else the DP shot. Nicho Lion Nissim is the DP's name. And some of the cinematography is actually really excellent. And so, if you're watching a movie and it's not great, but it looks decent, and some of the action comes on momentarily and is good, it helps you get through. So, all credit to the cinematographer on that one,
Awesome.
and Sindel Bergman because she's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny because that plot sounds exactly like Robotrix, which is a movie I almost watched for this one, but I decided not to because I've done an entire review on that 88 films limited edition. But yeah, I love that type of story. Was so like out there and just it's going for the bizarre,
I
and
don't.
it's so cool. I love those type of stories.
Have you seen this one that Vinegar Syndrome put out, Steel and
I
Lace?
have not, but I've been meaning to.
It. I was expecting it to be like this. This is like, this is your sort of like basic "I spit on your grave" Death Wish kind of movie, like the revenge for a personal attack. I was expecting it to be like that because she's a cyborg in it, but it's not. I recommend this too.
Cool. So I can jump into my next one if you want.
Please go ahead.
So this one is one that I've seen 3 times now. And I think I've decided that I just am not as engaged with it as everybody else is. But I understand why people love it. And I love it, but I think I'm just not in the right mood to watch it when I do watch it. Because every time I watch it, I'm just like, it's great. But, I only give it 4 stars on Letterboxd. And I feel guilty looking at everybody else's, and it's 5 and 4.5. And I'm going to have to go with Patrick Swayze starring Roadhouse.
Oh, I love Roadhouse.
this and I read every single review by people on Letterboxd to like understand, and I'm like, I think it's just me because I love the insane martial arts of Shaw Brothers, of Golden
Hmm.
Harvest with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung and all them. I love the Thai martial arts with Tony Jaa. Like all over the world, I love these really beat 'em up movies, and this movie definitely is it. But I think it's because I'm just used to the action. And I love the music. I love the cinematography. I love the actors. Keith David is in it. Sam Elliott is in it. Like everybody we all love. It just doesn't hit right. And I think it has to do. I think one scene in particular really encapsulates what I mean. And it's the scene where Patrick Swayze is at the end at the millionaire's house, and the big polar bear is being pushed forward. And I'm like, get out the way, get out the way. And he's like, ah, and he pushes him over. And I think like I love it when I'm talking about it, but while watching it, I get so frustrated, and I'm just like, go, and it's just it drives me crazy, like the how grounded it real feels, but then sometimes it really goes out there. And it was also built up to me because when it was announced, everybody just went insane because this is a very music heavy movie, so it's always been tied up. Had no Blu-ray as far as I know, and if it did, it was a very basic one.
Oh, it had a couple ones. It
Oh,
had
did
one
it?
for Shout Factory too.
Oh wow, I didn't even know
But
that.
Shout Factory screwed up the color timing. It's all
Oh,
very blue. It looks very
oh
teal. It doesn't
gosh.
look right.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awful. But so it's kind of the sense that it's very grounded, but it goes into that 80's bizarre that I still need to kind of wrestle through my mind because the 70's, oh my god, I love like every single 70's movie because
Yeah.
I get it and I've seen enough to where I can be like, oh, that reminds me, and I'm pattern matching all over the place. But for this movie, because I haven't seen as many 80's action films, I don't have that breadth of knowledge that I do. Like Patrick Swayze, I love him in Donnie Darko because he stood up to a producer because they didn't want to, his agent didn't want him to be that role for very obvious
Yeah.
reasons, a very dark role. But Patrick Swayze was like, hey, I have a terminal illness. I'm going to die here soon. I really want to do this. And he did the
Yeah.
movie and he died, I think, 6 months later or died before it came out in theaters, something. But they talk about in the Donnie Darko Arrow Limited booklet. They have an interview with the director and the producer who were championing this movie, and the agent was like, "Oh no, like we gotta, I don't want you to tarnish your reputation." And this
Right.
movie, I get it, but I haven't seen many other Patrick Swayze movies. Is the issue? I don't think I've seen. What is the very popular dance movie he's in that everybody
Dirty
loves?
Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. I haven't seen that one.
Dirty
Like,
Dancing is a blast.
oh, is it? Okay. I've always assumed it's
I
like a like parent kind of movie.
Oh, it is. It is, but I can't get enough of it. He has a song on the soundtrack called She's Like the Wind,
Ooh.
and there's also an 80s okay, do you know the 80s song Hungry Eyes?
Mm-hmm.
It's from that soundtrack, and it's
Oh
I
wow.
just those songs to me are just like they just kind of wash over me with like this I have nostalgia for a time I wasn't alive, which is really weird, but um no, I yeah, Dirty Dancing's fun.
Yeah, I really love the script as well because while I was watching it, I was like, okay, I know the movie. I saw it 2 times in a weekend because I was so desperate to like see why people loved it so much, and I do see it now. And this watch, I really focused in on the script and everything. There's no filler in this movie. It's constantly building and developing all of our characters. Oh, you got the standard?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one
Um
sold out real fast.
I didn't even. I was like, I'll wait.
But I'm trying to think anything else with the movie. I love the kind of world building where in the intro scene we have Patrick Swayze kind of already at the bar, being
Hmm.
being sort of the bouncer, I guess, the main bouncer. And so the guy walks in. He's like, "Hey, like, I want you to, be in charge of mine. We get people out of the hospital all the time, and people die. Once one guy dies every night." And Patrick Swayze
Right.
is like, "You got to go get this guy," and he's like, "He's too old." And in many movies, I feel like that would just be brushed, like past, and like they would never show this older kind of bouncer. But in this movie, it's fucking Sam Elliott, and he's awesome, and he's like, he's no bullshit. He doesn't fuck around. The guy,
Hit somebody in the knees.
yeah, he just like punches people in the dick, because one guy calls him dickless. I mean, it's really like, I love his character so much because it's so like out there. But
Yeah.
that's what drives me crazy because I should love this movie. Everything I'm talking about, I love, but I think it just has to do like I'm not in the right like mindset going in to watch it. And I
That
love
might be.
the music mostly. That's what kept me propelled throughout
Yeah.
the to the end is the music.
Um, Jeff Healy, who plays the guitar in the band in the Double Deuce band, he's really like such a talented guitarist, and all the music he wrote for the movie I love. But then he has some songs that came out after the movie that I can't get into. He has like an album that came out directly after the movie, and so it has all that same production, but for whatever reason, I just can't get into the music. But anytime he's on the screen playing the guitar, I'm like, I'm in, because the
Uh,
songs that they pick for this movie are excellent.
yeah, and I love that, and I assume they did this because, I mean, they're not going to ADR it, but it looks like he's playing it live, like in front of the camera, and he's just
Yeah.
going at it on the guitar. He's not even doing it, normal guitar. He's like playing like a piano with the guitar, and like
Yeah.
crazy shit. Like, I'm really impressed by his guitar skills.
Great player. I have a couple of comments on Roadhouse. I'll be brief, but uh, Roadhouse was set up for me as being like a terrible movie. I was told it was a terrible movie. I was like, okay, I like bad movies, I like B movies, and I like action movies, so I'll give it a watch. And I watched it, and I was already aware of who Dean Cundy was. Uh, and I was like, Dean Cundy shot this movie? What? I knew that Patrick Swayze had a big name, but I hadn't seen Dirty Dancing. I knew Sam Elliott. I was like, okay, but they'll occasionally get an actor like Sam Elliott. Um, but I watched it, and I was just like, this. I don't because I had been told it was like such a terrible movie. I had my expectations set so low that when I ended up enjoying it, I was like, I really like this movie. And I watched it in high school the first time, and I went to school the next day, and I was telling my friend at school, I was like, I watched this movie where Patrick Swayze is fighting a guy by a lake, and he reaches in, rips his throat out, throws it in the lake, and then kicks his body into the lake, and I'm like, and that's just insane. And he lives with a farmer, and that's weird, but kind of cool. And there's a Ben Gazzara has a helicopter. Okay. So, and like they all have four wheelers and they drive a monster truck. It's all around insane. Um, and then they drive the monster truck through the dealership, and I'm like, that's yeah, just go for it. And all of the dialogue in the bar where they're like trying to rag on Patrick Swayze and he's just playing it so cool. I was like, okay, this is really cool. So I think it takes if you haven't seen it, it takes low expectations going in to really appreciate it, because I think originally it was kind of disparaged by critics and things, but it's sort of gotten a reappraisal, um, especially by fans. It's sort of got like a cult following, but I think that's what benefited me, and maybe not you, because you said you saw so many praises for it
Oh yeah.
going in. So yeah, but Patrick Swayze, interesting guy. There's a documentary on him I need to watch. I haven't seen yet, but the there's an interview with him in the booklet for Donnie Darko 2, where he talks about like how he was constantly like searching for something outside of himself, and he would do meditation, or he would try different ways of like just sort of trying to find himself and stuff. Which, I mean, I don't know, just an interesting guy. And I think what really sets him apart is the fact that he did pick different roles. After being established as an action guy with something like Red Dawn, or uh, I'm neglecting to remember any of the others, but he goes and does Dirty Dancing, which is like, okay, I mean, obviously he's playing on his looks, but that's fine. He's doing something different. That's cool. And then he goes and does Roadhouse, and that's way more silly in tone than anything else he's done. And then he goes and does Donnie Darko, and he's playing this guy who's awful. And but he was always willing to kind of do something different, which I really appreciated from him as an actor. And so I think I'm a pretty big fan of Patrick Swayze.
Yeah, I don't have too many other comments on this movie, but I also want to shout out the love interest for Patrick Swayze, because he carries around all his medical files with him, and he's like, yeah, it saves time. And it's like that explains it. Like, we don't need any other information. And his relationship with her is pretty great, because she's getting caught in the crossfires of the millionaire, and he's like, you need to stop seeing him, and is trying to play her against Patrick Swayze. And Patrick Swayze is like, I'm just trying to do my job, and this guy keeps trying to bring back these awful employees who, they're skimming from the top, they're selling drugs, all this stuff. And, she just kind of accepts him for who he is until like the end when there has to be drama. And that's sort of a bit where it loses me is with her character because she's sort of just the support for Patrick Swayze. I wish she
Right.
had a bit of a more of a role to the story. Maybe I don't know what she would do, but I mean, she treats his injuries, so I mean, that's nice.
Yeah. She's a great actress though, Kelly Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in the film by Gus Van Sant called Drugstore Cowboy,
Hmm.
which I just recently watched from Imprint has it out. And she's great in that movie. And that movie's I've seen three of Gus Van Sant's movies, probably his three most popular ones, but I've loved every one of them. And she's great in that movie. And yeah, so if you want to seek something out with her where she I think has a little more to do, check out Drugstore Cowboy. It's a heavy movie, but it's good.
Awesome, I will. Yeah.
William S. Burroughs is also in it. So
Ooh.
you want me to go to three
Yep.
or number one, I guess?
Or yeah, your favorite one. Let's see.
So this is one that I got primarily based on cast. Again, I don't watch trailers, so I didn't know what to expect going into it. I knew it was kind of a war movie, kind of like a, thriller. And I'm a big thriller fan. I'm a big action thriller fan more than any other kind of action. So, um, but this is a war movie, and it has a really good cast. And it's called Package. And Kino Lorber had released this, and it went out of print. And they just re-released it. So this is
Hmm.
the new re-release. But again, what really got me was I heard the cast and I was like, I'm in. So it has Gene Hackman, um, who I like Gene Hackman, Tommy Lee Jones, who's always a good actor, Joanna Cassidy from Blade Runner, and I mean, countless things. She's in a ton of stuff and she's always great. Dennis Franz from Blowout and Dress to Kill, um, and Pam Grier, um, John Hurd,
Oh my
um,
god.
just like all around the cast is just perfect. So I mean, like when I heard Pam Grier and John Hurd were in it, I mean, I was like, okay, the two of them, in addition to Gene Hackman, I'm in. But then all the other people was like, okay, I'm in. So and while this is my favorite of the three I watched, it's still not one I will like wholeheartedly recommend. But um, going from the other two, I did watch this one last of the three, but going from the other two into this one has certainly shows that it has the biggest budget of the three. The feel of this movie, the climax is super big and grand. And the plot's fairly interesting too. So it was released in 1989, um, just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it's set where, basically fictionally, uh, Gorbachev from Russia and Bush Senior uh, signed a peace treaty to drop nuclear warfare from one another and allow Russia to join the UN and sort of sign like just in the Cold War essentially, um, with no sort of major changes in ideology either. So it's fictional. um, but what's really interesting is the bad guys are not Russia nor the US. It's people inside the military in both countries who are more interested in each country's respective military industrial complex because these high level generals in the armies of both Russia and the United States are making money off of the arms race in both countries. So it's about crooked people in each military rather than each country being crooked. So I thought that was an interesting take because in the 80's there was a lot of painting with broad strokes and sort of saying they're the bad guys or they're the bad guys or what have you. But this does not necessarily set it up that way. It says there's bad people in each country at different levels who are going to control and as much as you want to put the blame on one person, it's probably somebody behind the scenes. So that's sort of an interesting take. Now, Andrew Davis is the director of this movie, and I want to mention him because and that's what I was saying earlier. Is like, I talk about Albert Pune or James Glickenhaus or somebody who is maybe operating below the budgetary level of someone like John McTiernan who did Die Hard, or Richard Donner that made Lethal Weapon. But like, he has a very singular vision as an action director himself. So he made a movie with Chuck Norris called Code of Silence, which, Chuck Norris you got to kind of take with some, you know, um, you got to understand, what you're watching. But Code of Silence is a really good movie, and once again, like this one, the supporting cast is just spot on, just an excellent cast in that movie. And both movies are set primarily in Chicago, and he knows how to shoot. He was born in Chicago, too, the director, so it shouldn't be surprising. But he knows how to shoot Chicago perfectly. He knows all these locations that sort of look excellent for the backdrop of the story. He finds some really like great places to shoot the film. Um, Another thing in this movie is at one point Gene Hackman's in a car and he's going under bridges, and it is directly parallel to the French Connection car chase. So I mean, like he was clearly playing on that, and it works. I mean, it's not nearly as impressive, but it's not nearly as long either. But uh, I mean, still a decent car chase, some really good cinematography, excuse me, um, a great score, and a really pretty decent climax that is pretty thrilling with a good cast. I think it kind of takes of the three, it takes the top spot. But it should be noted that this also, like I said, had the highest budget. I did compare of the three, and it shows. It sort of shows that they had a lot more to work with, and not to mention that the script is also uh, pretty decent. It's kind of the dialogue's kind of run of the mill, but all the action and the idea that it's not just black and white, the political issues that we face in the world, that there's people behind the scenes who are really doing a lot to muck everything up. That really does stand out, especially among the 80s like movies where like Rambo's just going in and killing a bunch of people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I recommend it.
Cool. I've actually never even heard of that movie. I didn't even know it was a new release. Like, that's how little I know about it. But I'm a lot more interested now. Look, sounds great.
I would say great. It's good.
Yeah. The cast especially sounds like my
Yeah.
style because I love Pam Grier. I love John Hurd. And I really like fuck, what's Gene
Gene
Hackman's
Hackman.
yeah, I love him in French Connection also. Although I don't
Yeah.
love the character at all. I think he's a
Yeah.
despicable character, but I love his acting for it. And he's
There's a lot
very
of
he's very just committed to like the role like on
yeah.
screen.
There's a lot of controversy about the French Connection here lately, with the Criterion Channel having the censored version that Disney gave them because
Hmm.
maybe Disney, maybe Fox before Disney purchased them, censored it. Um, I think that's, you can't. That's something that I think it should be said when you watch it as a preface to the movie. Is when William Friedkin gave the script to Gene Hackman. Gene Hackman had so many reservations. He said, "I don't even want to do this." He didn't even want to do the movie, but William Friedkin said, "You are the person who can do this. So you've read for it, and I can't see anybody else in it now. You have to do it." And so it went sort of against Gene Hackman's, sort of uh, beliefs and his personal feelings to do the movie, but uh, he does it with he still does it. He's fully committed to the role, and I think that goes to show how professional Gene Hackman is as an actor. But also another thing is like everybody. not to turn it into like a political discussion or an ideology discussion, but like um, the French Connection is a perfect example of we can't if you have a movie where all the people are good guys, there's no conflict.
Hmm.
But William Friedkin, in every movie he's made, I think, regardless of, I mean, every movie he's written, I should say, because if I don't know about some of the later ones that I haven't seen, but like, in The French Connection, in To Live and Die in L.A., and Cruising, and The Exorcist, every character is flawed. There's not a single character without flaws, and French Connection to me is a perfect exercise in understanding that the stereotypical good guy and the stereotypical bad guy both have bad things about them and they also both have good things about them, and you have to understand and take, because the world's not black and white, it's a big gray area, and so you kind of have to take what you can get, and I think French Connection's a perfect example of that. I don't agree, I don't condone, what was said in the movie at all, but even Gene Hackman didn't. The movie is about a flawed character, so I think that's an important sort of disclaimer to be made before you watch The French Connection.
Oh yeah, and I always champion flawed characters because for me that's a way for us to learn, how to
Mhm.
navigate, our lives because we can see it through
You
their eyes and see what they do and be like, okay, well that didn't work out, or maybe it will work out for me, so on and so forth. But
to digress one more time. Do you know Noam Chomsky?
a little bit, a little bit.
Um, there was a when the whole idea of what cancel culture is started to come
Hmm.
out. Okay, which is basically just a way of saying I don't want to deal with the repercussions from my bad actions if you're being
Yeah.
canceled.
Hmm.
Um, which is crazy because the people who say that are the ones that preach, you know, deal with what you've made your bed, lie in it. So you can't practice what you preach. But anyway, Noam Chomsky basically said if you are to remove, I like a lot of his ideology, and he says if you are to remove completely from the conversation the negative uh elements, the people who are saying things you disagree with, if you were to basically completely silence them and censor them to the point where you can't hear what they're saying, how are you going to know what you disagree with? Because eventually you'll get to a point where you're only hearing what you agree with, and then at that point, if that message changes, you're just going to go along with the status quo because you've built yourself into a bubble. So, um, and I really like that point. I disagree with a lot of like certainly like the character of Popeye Doyle in The French Connection. I would not get along with a person like that. But if I am to completely push them out of my life, eventually, once the person that I trust completely and put myself into completely and say I support them 100%, if they start to change and I continue to just support them without me knowing, I'm going to change my own opinion and it's not going to work in my favor. It's going to go against what I initially believed. It's sort of like and another problem with like social media. I think is like the more people get enthralled in social media and sort of curating their feeds to be only what they want to hear, um, the more you sort of lose your own will to make up your own mind because you're just listening to what others say and agreeing with them, and then you haven't made a single decision on your own. So
Yeah.
social media has a lot of on society is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, follow me on Twitter.
Yeah. But so my last movie is a really funny one because now I can confirm your question that yes, uh, Sandal Bergman is in this film. My favorite
Oh
movie that I
yeah.
chose is Hell Comes to Frogtown. This was actually introduced to me by Will pretty soon after we met, and that was one of the first movies I had gotten from Vinegar Syndrome, aside from the Rudy Ray Moore movies that I was like, well, I already knew him, so I got that. But Hell Comes to Frogtown was a movie I did not like when I first started watching it because I did not really see the satire of it because I was
Hmm.
so because this was years ago and I've done a lot of healing since then and I've been a lot more understanding of like getting all the information going in and I know a lot more about like what I believe in, all that, just to kind of continue that conversation. And this movie, like, it is a spitting satire and I love it.
Yeah.
I love the kind of gender politics going on where now the males are impotent and the women have all the power, but you also still kind of have the army jarheads who are just, really instigating, violence and, fucking shit up. But you also have a really great cast because you have Sandal Bergman. First of all, she's great in this one. I love her character a lot. She's very interesting. She's a very different character than what you see in the 80's, and that's why I love this movie so much. But you also
Yeah.
have Roddy Piper in this one, and he's a actor who I really appreciate, especially in They Live, because he is so like idealistic in the beginning of that film, and by the end of it, he's like "fuck you," and
Jaded.
he just gets out, with the grenade. But in this movie, he's playing a very similar character, but
Hmm.
he's just kind of going along for the ride because he can't do anything about it. While in They Live, he's just kind of, I guess, resigned to the situation, but Keith David, helps him to get out of that situation. But one thing that's really cool is that we have one of my favorite kind of supporting 80's actors, William Smith, playing the antagonistic military guy who's, I love his voice too. Like, it's very raspy, it's very distinct. It's like a perfect 80's villain voice. And he really plays that up
Hmm.
in every movie he does because he's also in one of my favorite, I guess, 90's action movies, Champagne and Bullets. And he plays that up like even more in that movie than this one. And I love it. And
I don't
it's
remember
an
his name in that movie. I can't
uh,
remember his name in that movie.
oh because you have
It's something
Huck.
very unique.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
Huck,
Huck.
who's Rutger Hauer, and you have
Wingshauser.
Rings Hauer. My bad. Oh my gosh, that's gonna bother me. His name, but
The main guy's John DeHart.
John DeHart. Yeah, his commentary on the it should be a Criterion on the Vinegar
It
Syndrome
should.
release.
I
That
haven't listened to the
commentary is
commentary yet.
insane. Like, I remember when they announced that release and they were like, "We have a new commentary with the director," and I was like, "What?" Like, and yeah, that was a big Christmas present to my life getting that release. Thank you, Vinegar Syndrome. Also with Hell Comes to Frogtown, but I also really love the creature designs in Hell Comes to Frogtown because
Yeah.
the first half of it is your very standard post-apocalyptic 80's action film, like I don't want to say Death Wish 3, but it's very much that. You have your, Mad Max era time, post-apocalyptic films, all of that. And then the second half is them in Frogtown with sentient talking frogs who all have very distinct personalities. I love the frog who is sort of the point of contact for the military because he has a big red fez hat and he's like, "I'll give you the best beer in town. It's only a little radiated or whatever, radioactive." And like this movie is like 88 minutes, I think, so it's very well paced. I mean, I watched it
Yeah.
last night before Roadhouse, so I did a double feature of them, and that was like the most perfect time because it's like 88 minutes. The first half is like exactly the first half of the runtime is them getting to Frogtown. Then the second half is them dealing with Frogtown. And I just love the movie so much. I get it now, Will. I know you're watching this. I get it now. I did not get it in 2017, but I think I love it now.
It's interesting you mention well, Will in this because I watched it in his class. That's
Oh,
how I
yeah?
saw it. And I had heard about it and heard about it and heard about it, mainly because of the title. The title being so just unique, like, you know, no other movie's gonna be called that. So it's not like The Revenge. It's Hell Comes to Frogtown. So and when I when he told us we were gonna be watching that in class, I was like, okay, awesome. I'm in because I've heard about it and heard about it. Love Roddy Piper and They Live. Uh, John Carpenter's my favorite director. I know you had said something about talking about my favorite directors, and I didn't really. John Carpenter's my favorite director, so They Live is one of my favorite movies. I love Roddy Piper in that movie. So I was like, okay, Roddy Piper's in it. Uh, you got the title. It sounds interesting. And when I went into it with these expectations of what it would be, uh, it did not fulfill those expectations at all. And I think I need to revisit it because in the class, he had us. It was a cult films class, and he had us talk about at the end of the semester what was our favorite movie and what was our least favorite movie, or something like that. And everyone's least favorite movie was a film by um oh, I can't, why can I not remember her name? Bad Girls Go to Hell's the movie.
Oh, that's a great movie. Doris Richmond,
Yeah,
right? Oh
Doris
no,
Fishman. So
is it? Yeah, Bad
it
Girls
is
Go to
it is
Hell.
Doris.
Yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah,
Doris
so
Richmond.
everybody was talking about Doris Wishman like being their least favorite movie because it's what it is. It's a movie that it's a hard watch. No joke at
Oh
all.
yeah.
But I actually ended up praising the movie because like I think I was one of the only ones that praised the movie because I thought that she does a lot of things with it, especially if you consider the budgetary limitation and the fact that she was working on the level as far as production as she was to make something with as much. There's a lot of things she does in the movie I think intentionally that sets the film apart from other movies of its same genre, other contemporaries. If you talk about other movies that are um like rape revenge films, it has a very interesting. Anyway, I digress. But Hell Comes to Frogtown, I said, was probably my biggest letdown in the class because I had these expectations for it, and it didn't follow that because the first half is what it is, and you kept saying the first half, and the first half is I got the satire, but it didn't click with me until after I'd watched it. So when I was watching, I'm like, okay, I don't like Roddy Piper's character at all. Uh, I don't really care for William Smith's character. I don't like the military characters. And I don't like that they're forcing people to do stuff against their will. It's just very. I don't like anybody here. And I don't necessarily. I see how I'm going to. And then you get to the second half, and it's like almost like a tonal shift because it goes from like a kind of very serious, as serious as a movie like this would get, um, film into something that has a lot of comedy in it. And I think that the I didn't expect the first half to be the way it was. I expected it to be 88 minutes of basically the second half, tonally and all in Frogtown. I didn't know. So I think going into it a second time, I'll probably have a better mindset because I'll know what to expect. But I think the uh, I think everything you said I agree with. It's just it certainly probably takes a couple viewings to get appreciate
Yeah.
fully. So
Yeah, it's funny because I had exactly the same experience as you. I mean, I didn't see it in class, but Will recommended it, and I had exactly the same thing because I expected the whole movie to be that way. And it starts off very serious about all the nuclear wars that go on, and how we got to the point that we are now in the beginning of Hell Comes to Frogtown, and it was just really interesting on the second watch because I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into. And this time I watched it and I loved it a whole lot more. So I definitely encourage that because it's really interesting how expectations keep coming up this episode and how like it really, affects our watching of the movie because, we get these big expectations. We're like, oh, it was okay. I understand why people like it. And then you get How It Comes to Frogtown where we both were like, oh, whoa, like, we've been hearing about this, for however long and we really want to see it, and we see it, and it's not what we expect, which is fine.
Yeah.
And that's what, makes, for me as a film watcher, this is why I love rewatching, because I'm like, okay, I'm older. I, read this book about the actor or the director or the producer, editor, writer, whatever, and I have a lot more context and I can enjoy it. So, yeah, this episode and all the movies we talk about and the discussions we've had, this is why I do this channel, because this is what I love doing, because we get new ideas, we can bounce, commentary off of one another, and it's just nice. So
Well, I agree with you, and even though I don't do this, rewatching stuff, especially stuff that I love, because I go back to the same well. Like I've watched They Live 4 or 5 times, and I'll watch it 4 or 5 times more in the next decade, I'm sure. Um, you get like certain movies, like if you really love a movie. So for me, like my favorite movies, either Blowout or Blue Velvet. So those two movies, I keep going back to them because the more I can kind of analyze them, the more I kind of get from them what it is I actually like about them. I can break them down, and I want to be a filmmaker. I'm a wannabe, but as I write, because I do some writing, screenplay writing, or I'm trying anyway. Um, the more I break down what it is, what elements from each movie I appreciate, I'm able to sort of understand how I want to approach stories I want to tell too. So, rewatching, say what you will about it. A lot of people say, quit going back and maybe try something new. Yeah, definitely keep expanding your horizons, but there's nothing wrong with rewatching, especially if you're trying to get to a certain, end. If you're trying to find something out that, like, if you can't pinpoint it, you're like, I love that scene in, I don't know, any movie, I love that scene in Blue Velvet, and I don't know what it is about it that I love it. If you watch it 3 times, you can break it down and you can find what it is you like. And um, so rewatching it reaps a lot of benefits. So uh, I don't have any. There's no reason to judge anybody for anything they do when it comes to film watching habits, because we all experience things differently. So
well, on that note, that's a perfect note to end on, because that's what makes film collecting so interesting to me, is the interaction with other people and figuring all that out.
absolutely.
So with that in mind, thank you so much for joining with me today. It has been so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Uh,
Thank you.
I'm really excited to see what else we do. Well, I'll have to find a theme that will really stretch your horizons.
Please,
And
yeah,
really,
I need that.
yeah. But okay, so if you're still watching, thank you all so much for watching. And please like the video, comment, everything that we know. And
Correct
please,
all my mistakes, please.
yeah.
I know I made some.
Yeah, yeah, just, everyone, please have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you.